Hi everyone, welcome back to Rick's 1/35 scale models. My name is Rick. Today's part 2 of my amusing hobby 1/35 scale KF51 Panther build. Now in the first video I did the open box looking at the parts, kind of evaluating it. This is my first amusing hobby model that I built, and I learned quite a bit about their model as far as this one goes and the overall quality of it. Some of the challenges I had, which I'm going to discuss here shortly. But I was able to complete the model build, and it's now ready to start the painting process. But I want to show you kind of what I went through and some of the things I did. Now, first of all, the model is a good platform. It's great quality details. Some of the things I did do on it is I replaced some of the hatch handles with the 3D resin design ones I made that are more accurate and actually have the able to grip it versus just a piece of plastic that sticks up. The model had some of them you actually added on which looked great, and then they had some of them that they were the old style that looked horrible, so I fixed all that. Also the model, and I didn't notice during the review, but I noticed it during the build, it doesn't have the actual raised Rheinmetall insignia on the front or on the back, and it doesn't have the KF51 on the back. So I actually sat down, created a 3D resin raised one and installed that, and I'm really happy with how that came out. The other thing I noticed, and toward the end of the build, I'd already primed it and I'm looking at it and it just didn't seem right, is the on the barrel there's a cover over the barrel. And when you look at it, it almost looked like there was a mesh inside this kind of a sideways L pattern venting area on it. And it made sense that it was a vent. When you look at like a Puma, which is also Rheinmetall build, there's a vent on the barrel shroud that covers the barrel. Well, this I would have assumed had the same thing, but the model has a flat piece of plastic there. I dug around on the internet and actually found some pictures, and it does have a mesh, so I actually was able to cut that out and replace it with the mesh, which I'll show toward the end of the video. Lastly, the one horrible part of the model, actually there's two parts that I really wasn't happy with. First of all, the plastic on the model is really soft. So when you go to build it, you're going to have to be real careful, because the second the glue hits it, it immediately softens it, and you have no chance if you make a mistake to wipe it. It just gets ugly from the get-go. It's a really soft plastic. It's actually almost too soft. So when it came time to do the tracks, which is my second issue, the way they connected, they're nice looking tracks, but the model I'm building is supposed to be at a show, pristine, perfectly clean. Well, the way they connect the track links, I would spend days just cleaning all the little parts, and then as I went to clean them, because it's such a soft plastic, it actually damaged them and they were breaking, and there aren't that many extra track links. So what I ended up doing is I switched over to Bronco's Leopard 2 tracks, which are a lot better looking track link, I think, and changed those, and it worked out just fine. But that's kind of just the basics here, and I'm going to talk about, as we go through the build process, what I did. So let's get started on the build itself. Okay, the initial part of the model build is the lower hull. This comes in 4 sections. You've got your 2 sides, your bottom, and your back. Now, most of the sprue point connections are pretty solid, no complications, and it won't really affect your fit. But the bottom panel there on the side, it's definitely important to clean them off and make them nice and smooth. But pretty straightforward on how they want you to do it. They also want you to drill a couple holes. That's another important stage. But they've got pre-markers, which make it pretty straightforward and simple. Next, they want you to start the installation of all the road wheels and return wheels. Now, at this point, I did start to notice that the plastic on this model was really soft. This is the first point in which I realized I had a little bit more of a challenge. But
But as I said, you install the road wheel returns, then you'll install the spring system, and then the axles themselves. All, like I said, pretty straightforward, just a slow process of cutting, cleaning, and prepping. The next thing I looked at, noticed, and decided to do was to modify the recovery hooks. On the actual vehicle, there's a ring that obviously hangs down, but then it has these pins that hold that on with a chain connecting on both sides. So what I did is, after prepping the hole for the installation, I drilled a hole on the side of it, and that created a point where I could add a piece of wire for the handle part, and then from there I could easily add the wire and then the chain that goes in. This is how I'm drilling it out here. It actually was a pretty straightforward process. The nice thing, like I said, because the plastic's soft, it made this a lot easier. I installed the axles and then made sure that they were level and square with a straight edge. That's what I'm doing here. And then from there, I started prepping the back panel that goes on this. Now, it's one piece and there's not a whole lot of movement to it. But what I did notice is the mud flaps were way too thick. So what I did is, after verifying everything was going to work right, I took a grinder and started smoothing them down and making them thinner. This made for a lot nicer, more realistic look. The fit on this is actually really good. Really happy with the fit quality here. Now, grinding this off was actually pretty easy, but as I had said before, the plastic is so soft on this, it actually melted if I got too aggressive, so it took longer than normal. Even using just a regular piece of sandpaper, the plastic wanted to melt instead of just grind off. So that was a little frustrating, but it still worked out okay. So after finishing all these parts, it was time to put the top plate on the lower hull. And as I had said before, there aren't a lot of parts to this kit, so I just had to get it prepped. Now I still had to add the tow cable points and the recovery points, a little bit of touch-ups on the edge here, and then as I said, it was time to put the top on. Now it once again another really good fit, just a little bit of pulling it outward on the sides of the lower part to make it fit right, but it went together nicely without any real putty work or sanding. Just hit the with the glue points and then put it on. While this was drying, I went through the process of assembling all the road wheels. Now, the way they have these set up, you slide them on the little sprue piece that sticks out, and then there's a cap that you glue on the end. They will turn, but the cap itself is kind of loose, so when it comes time to install these and make them actually spin, it will be a little bit of a challenge, but it is possible if you do it just right. Next stage is working on the turret. Now, the turret has two pieces. They glue together easily. No point really showing it. It's just stick them together and glue it. But I started the barrel. Now, the barrel's actually a little unique. It's a slide molding, and they come in 3 sections, so you have to make sure their alignment's just right, because they can come out of alignment. And then there's this 2-piece section that a cover around a large portion of the barrel. So I went through the process of installing that, getting it all lined up, and then gluing it together. And like I said, the biggest challenge here is making sure that it was straight and aligned properly, but no big challenge. What I will say, and you'll see later on, is I'll modify this. So before you glue these together, make sure you check the end of the video. I did a modification, and you're going to want to do that if you're going to decide to before you glue these together. Now, there aren't a lot of parts to put on the turret, but you do have your hatches. What's interesting is it has the hatch inside and outside, but if you're going to have the hatch closed, as I am, you don't need the inside part on there, so I didn't glue that. But they go together nicely and smooth. They do have a nice little handle on them, so it gives a nice results. There are some covers over the periscopes you have to install. The nice thing is the periscopes are slid in from the underside, and you can do that after it's painted, because there's enough opening inside to go about that process. But I went through the process of installing those different parts, leaving out the periscopes till after it's painted, and then moved on to the next stage. Now, one of the things about this kit that I noticed, and I don't have an answer for, is especially around the drones, there's a bunch of small parts that look like they belong somewhere. Well, I'm looking through the instructions, and nowhere does it indicate what to do, where to use them, or if they're even needed. I went through the instructions multiple times trying to figure it out, and there's nothing there. But the next stage was preparing to make the gun. Now, I unfortunately did that, and it didn't record, so it wasn't recorded here, but it's a pretty straightforward process. It goes together nicely with a resin cover on the top. The barrel placement, or the machine gun placement on it, is a little critical. Make sure you clean it properly, really good, and so it'll fit properly. It kind of snaps tight. Here you can notice the difference in the size of the turret from a Leopard 2A6. Definitely a bigger vehicle. Now, as I said in the beginning of the video, I ended up not using the tracks it came with. They're the same. You've got a top and a bottom, and then the pin that goes on the side, but the cleanup was just too difficult. So I ended up going with the Bronco product, and I started the process of installing that. Now, the difference on the Bronco, for some reason, it only wants 79 track links, probably because they're a little too wide, although when I measured them, they measured the same as the models, but for some reason, it only needs 79. If you do 83, which is what it should have, it'll end up being too loose. Now, the vehicle has 3 handles that you have to glue on, which look really nice. But then it has 4 other handles that look horrible, and they're pre-cast on. So I cut those off, and with my 3D printer created my own, and then I went through the process of gluing them on, which is what I'm doing here. Now, they're very small and delicate, but it definitely gives a better look and finish overall. You have one on either side of the turret, and then there's right on the back side of the left side of the turret there's one, and then there's one on the top right to the right of the machine gun on the roof. I cut the plastic ones off, which were just a piece that stuck up, there's no hole in it, and then put 3D printed ones which actually look more realistic. So next I started the priming process, getting ready to paint it. Now on the tracks, I'm using mahogany Mr. Color to prime it with the Mr. Surface product. And this is the 120, which is a pretty nice fine primer, works great. I use a 50-50 blend of their thinner and the primer, and give it a nice good soaking to penetrate and make it look good. The vehicle itself I'm going to prime black, but I wanted this to be brown and then add all the other details. From there I started the process of doing the upper hull and lower in the black. Now I did it once again, the same product, but I'm using black, and I'm doing the 50-50 mix of their thinner and the prime product. Now I usually do the bottom, hit it 4 different directions, and then let it dry. And then by the time I've done the rest of it, that's dried. It's nice in that speed wise, and I start painting everything else. And one of the things I learned to make this a little faster is I put everything on a little wood dowel, and then by spinning it in my finger, I can hold the airbrush and get a nice good even coverage without over covering it. Especially for the road wheels and round parts, this works great. It speeds up the process and gives great results. What I like about Mr. Surfacer is it gets great coverage, but it also sticks really good, and it's a good foundation for the rest of the painting process. It's also pretty forgiving. If you get a little bit too much, it dries nicely and smooths out great. After I primed it, I noticed that something just wasn't right on the barrel, and that is on the sides here. There are these 3 L-shaped grooves, which on the real vehicle it almost seemed like they were some kind of a vent. Well, I dug around on the internet and noticed that they were in fact vents with a grill inside. So I went back, I was able to pop this part apart, and then I cut that out and then prepared it. Now I'm using Tamiya's Leopard 2A5, 2A6 basket material here that I didn't use in the last build I did of a Tamiya kit, and it was the perfect material to add in here, so I just cut it to fit and then used CA glue to secure it in place to give it a nice finished look. Once I got this all done, I glued it back together, reprimed it properly, and really happy with the overall results, which you'll see here shortly. Now, as you can see here, it's see-through, which is how it is on the real vehicle, and the different angles. Okay, so here's the completed build and ready to start the paint process. Obviously you can see the vehicle itself. Here's all the clear plastic that has to be installed. I have all the small parts kept in the little box here. The road wheels, the drive sprockets, the driver's hatch, the tracks, the drones here, The idea here is on this drone I'm going to have it coming out with a clear piece of sprue going into the hole it comes out of so that it looks like it's launching, and then you have your smaller drones here, and like you'll see if you see it displayed, they have one sitting just above one of the hatches that they come out of with another clear piece of sprue there for that. I have also the one section of track that'll, once I put this all on, is ready to go. As I had shown, I added the Rheinmetall logo. That's a raised logo on the front and on the back, and then the KF51 logo on the back of the vehicle itself. All of this part is all black, so I'll close this down. I did add a piece of plastic here to make it look a little cleaner. When you look at the actual vehicle, it looks almost like there may be an opening there, but I did that just to make it look, like I said, a lot cleaner, and then added a piece of plastic underneath the scope here so that it doesn't fall off because there was nothing to secure it. The rear machine gun has no mount, it just sits there. There was really no solid way to secure that properly, so that's how that's going to end up being. And then I have the antennas, once it's completed, to be added on. But that's the vehicle. As I kind of discussed the pros and cons of the build, overall still an outstanding build. Really nice results. It's once painted, it'll look amazing. So that's that. Now I'm going to start the painting process tomorrow. So once again, thank you for watching. Please like, please subscribe. You can get me on Facebook. Any questions or comments, always welcome. As I've always said, if you like something, please hit the like button. If you don't like something, please let me know. Any questions, comments, I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. And more videos coming soon on top of the final video of this painting process. So take care, everybody. Happy modeling, and see you on the next one. Bye-bye.